These are some of the companies that I've worked for. I've worked at Apple on the Photos and iCloud initiatives. I built the Key Rewards loyalty program for Williams-Sonoma that launched a couple of years ago. I worked on the mobile strategy at HP. I worked with the second row of people, all as sponsors for a film festival that I worked at. And I've held content strategy and product management jobs for the rest of the companies that you see here. So when I asked my students in the 2 cohorts that I've taught, what if I were to give a talk at product school, what do you think would be the most interesting thing for me to speak about? They said, tell us what it's like to work with your extensive experience at both startups and large companies. So that's why I'm here today. And you guys are my guinea pigs, so you guys let me know if I'm giving you the right information or not. I kind of thought you guys would have all already been through the product school program, so I kind of assumed that you were going to be kind of interested in trying to figure out, now that I've got my certification, what am I going to do? You know, there's a lot of different companies that are hiring. Google's doing a lot of hiring right now. Apple's doing a lot of hiring right now. Facebook's doing a lot of hiring right now. So do you go that route? Or do you go the scrappy route? Do you go with the improvisational route with the mad genius who has a great idea and a bunch of people who are super committed to one idea? So, as a product manager, whether you're at a small company, a small startup company, or a large company, there are certain things that they have in common with the product management role. There'll be some kind of software development lifecycle, right? It could be anywhere from lean to agile to waterfall, depending on the type of job that you take. If you work for the government, you'll be helping them transition from waterfall to agile in their processes. So there are still some people out there doing if you want to go work for Boeing, you might be working on waterfall. Or if you're building a hospital, you might be working in waterfall still. There'd be some kind of development methodology that the company has agreed to, right? So the CTO will have made some kind of decision working with the other C-suite executives at the small company, and depending which team you're on at a larger company, they'll have their own development methodology, and a lot of it will depend on the type of systems that you're building. There'll be marketing support, so depending on the size of the company, it'll be very systematized, and they will be designed to work specifically with you as a product manager, or it will be more general. There'll be one of the key skills that you'll have to be a successful product manager, no matter where you're at, is something we call cross-functional team leadership. And so what that means is that product managers sit in a kind of a world of their own, where they have the ability, I like to think about it, has anybody played soccer? Any soccer players here? You kind of get to be a halfback when you're a product manager, you know, whereas the forwards, they're focused on the front of the field and the defenders are focused on the back of the field. I always liked being a halfback because I could kind of run around everywhere when I played soccer. So with product management, you really have access to all different sorts of parts of the business, the engineering team, the marketing teams, customer support. Really depends on the type of company it is. But you're going to have you're going to be needing to lead teams, whether it's on a project or a product basis, towards a goal without any real authority. None of these people will report to you, right? So that's where the next, when you're leading a cross-functional team, they're not going to be reporting into you directly, but you're going to have to influence them, right? You're going to have to work with marketing. You're going to have to work with your designers to try to create a customer experience and a customer journey working with marketing. And it's going to be a bit of a challenge, right? And so this is a skill you're going to have to learn to master as a successful product manager, regardless of where you're at. And then in general, I think product management gets to kind of sit in this culture of innovation. So you're at the intersection of design and engineering, often working with marketing. So you're often solving problems that haven't been solved before. So you're in a really lucky place where you get to be at the crux of innovation. Okay, so startup life. We're going to talk about that a little bit first. So, I don't know, this to me seemed like what I think about when I think of startup life. you're renting some office space, it's sparsely populated. At one startup I worked at, we didn't even have desks, we just had file cabinets with doors that were our desks. And in order to get things right ergonomically, I actually had to get the shortest files possible so I could have a lower desk. So that's kind of the fun of startup life, is you're really making things up as you go along. And you're really often solving problems and creating processes where there weren't any before. So some of the things, so in terms of how you'll interact with other people at a startup company, you really have access to all parts of the organization. I mean, it kind of makes sense, right? If there are only 12 people at the company, there's not going to be too much of a hierarchy because everyone's really in the same room. And if you get up to 50 people, you would still probably have that same access depending on when you joined. So it tends to be a bit of a flat structure, right? So everybody talks to everybody within the company. So product is at the center, and really you have access to the executives, to your sales guys, or women, your salespeople, your marketing, engineering, your ops team, so that could be product management, legal, finance, customer support, and design. So, people like to say at startup companies that you wear a lot of hats, right? So I've been in many situations at smaller companies that I've worked at where, maybe we didn't have a UX designer on staff. So we kind of had to, the engineering team and I had to work it out on a whiteboard. And I had to learn to use Interface Builder for Mac OS 10. So there's a little bit of fluidity in the roles. We'll get into that in a little bit more detail, but some people really find that refreshing, right? Is that you have direct access to the CEO. You're working directly with the CTO of a company, and you get to be the steward of what the company ends up doing, right? So you get kind of hands-on experience by working with all these different people. I mean, these might be all of the people in the company right there, if you're a startup. So does that make sense for everybody? Okay. And then there's corporate life, right? So ideally you work at a company where you've got people of all ages and genders and different ethnic backgrounds working together. And typically you're going to be on a campus, right? So a startup company, maybe you're at WeWork. You might be at a campus where you're taking a shuttle to get there. There's free food. There might be free food at the startup too. I probably should have put that on the shared config slide. But it's a different kind of a work environment, right? It's a more professional environment. It's you'll get to know people, but probably only people that are working on the things that you're directly working on. So corporate life is a different road that you can go down. And so we'll talk a little bit about what are the advantages of being at each in just a minute. So when you think about corporate life, you're really talking more about matrixed organizations. Do you guys know what I mean when I'm talking about matrices? So, you've got your engineering teams, you've got your product teams, you've got your marketing teams, and then within that, there'll be different teams working on products. So the company I'm at right now, there's the enterprise products, and then there's the design tools, and then within that we have mobile applications versus desktop applications. And so there's just a constant kind of hierarchy of there's the CPO, and then there's VPs, and then there's directors, and then there's group product managers, and then there's product managers, and then there's maybe APMs reporting to them, or summer interns. So very different structure, right? Very hierarchical and matrix. And the other thing is, if you look at this chart as opposed to the other one I showed you, is that the product manager still has access to a lot of different types of people, but each of those people is very specific to the product that they're working on. So, you've got your product, you don't just have a marketing person, you have your product marketing manager. That's the interface to the entire marketing organization. And so they're going to be your partner in crime to figure out what is your outgoing message, who's your target audience, what's the sales motion going to be working with the sales team. and what types of marketing are going to be effective for this type of launch, and then they're going to engage the entire marketing organization for you. And then you've got the user research team, right? That as you come up with hypotheses for what you want to develop as a product manager, they're going to help you do the research to figure out if your hypotheses are correct and help you to refine that, so you can be sure about what you're bringing to market. And then, as I mentioned before, you have the hierarchy of the product organization leading up to the CPO, that's Chief Product Officer, or it could be the Chief Marketing Officer at some companies, or the CTO, depending on how things are structured. You'll have a product design team that'll be figuring out how does the user best accomplish the things that they want to accomplish in the product, consistent with the brand at your company. There'll be very specific guidelines for UX that are going to be based on user research. So there's a process to everything, and everything is specific to your product or your section of the product even, right? On some products you have as many as 10 or 12 product managers. I think at one point eBay had 110 product managers, and they're just a website. So there could be many, many product managers. So the roles just get more niche when you're in corporate. So maybe you're a technical product manager. Maybe you're someone who works on the desktop version of a product. Maybe you're just certain types of features on the desktop that have to do with, compositing, for example. And then you'll have a product analytics person that's going to help you to analyze all the data, whether it's revenue data, customer usage data. There's any number of types of data that you're going to want to look at to determine what kind of decisions need to be made for the product, what's going to go into products, maybe which features aren't being used very much and maybe should be deprecated in the product, where there's the best opportunity if you want to launch into a new geography, for example. The analytics resources will help you with that. You'll have your project managers that'll be helping you to keep things on schedule, make sure you've got the right resources, and help you prepare for the many meetings that you'll have to move the product forward. And then of course you'll have your engineering team. So they'll be the people who are realizing the vision that the product team has. So a very important resource, along with the product design team. So as you can see, it's a very different atmosphere where instead of wearing many hats, people wear a very specific size hat. But there are a lot of advantages to being in a much larger company, as we'll talk about in just a minute. So, any questions about that?
So, which two do you interact the most with as a product manager? Which one do you constantly interact?
Well, that's a good question. I think that really largely depends on what phase of the product lifecycle you're in. So as you're in the planning part of product management, where you're planning for the next release, the design team's going to be heavily involved, the sales team, product marketing is going to be giving you competitive information, the executives are going to weigh in with initiatives within the company that they want to be included in the next release. And then as you move into the requirements phase, you'll be working really closely with user research to validate hypotheses. You'll be working with the engineering team to determine how much work it is to do these features that you want to do. Customer support will weigh in to determine if this is something that the community has decided is important, right? So your community manager would be an important person in that phase. The project manager is with you every phase because they're keeping, wherever you're at, they're just keeping that constant cadence and making sure you're on track for those milestones. And then as you get into development, it's design and engineering. And then as you get closer to releasing a product, the marketing team kicks in. So it really depends.
So you still work on all the phases. You have a
product manager's pushing it through everything. Absolutely. Yeah. It doesn't really matter which type of product manager you are. You're involved in every phase of it. Yeah. Maybe some very technical product managers might not interface with marketing, for example. But yeah, that's kind of the fun thing about product management is that you're going through the product development lifecycle, and you're the steward of making sure that things are going through that. And then as you launch products, you're taking those learnings and you're pushing them into the next phase of product development. So it's really just a system that keeps working over and over again until a product, comes to its conclusion, right? Which happens, right? We're seeing a lot of that right now in the desktop market.
What kind of decisions do you usually make with marketing?
What's that?
What kind of decisions do you usually make with marketing?
Good question. As I mentioned a little bit before, it depends on the marketing organization. But in some cases, especially in a large corporation, the marketing organization is helping to identify where there are opportunities from a financial or revenue perspective, maybe a new geography. Maybe they've been working with a user research team to determine if you had a set of features that maybe a competitor has or you could beat a competitor with, they would maybe bring that to the product team and say, we've got some compelling data, and that might be part of the planning process. And then, of course, when the marketing team is always going to be on your side, so that if something comes up in your social channels, that people are upset about something with the product, they're going to feed that back to you. And then as you're going to launch a product, they'll be involved in understanding what the features are. So you'll be training them on what the features are, much like you do with the customer support team. And then they're going to have to take what you've given them, create messaging, and push that throughout all of the marketing organizations. So that might be display advertising, it might be web pages, it might be social campaigns, it could be email marketing. Yeah, thank you. I always forget lifecycle marketing. Sorry. So anyway, so they'll translate what's going to do the best to get the word out about your product, depending on which geographies and which target audience you want. So it's a lot. Maybe not so much in the development phase, but definitely at the beginning and the end of the process. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I'm a CEO in a early stage startup, and I'm a product manager and help with that.
And you're also which one? Are you all of them?
And almost.
Okay.
I just have CTO and myself. And I hired a business development manager.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Business development. And I have problem now that business development unit don't understand the product. So they can manage all things, but without product vision.
Right.
That's why I'm here. So, and let me know what stage we need product manager, from the beginning or later.
That's a great question, and it doesn't really pertain to this slide, which is talking about corporate, but I think it's a really important question. So when I get to the part where I'm comparing the two.
What is the role of product manager?
If you have a CEO and there's only 4 people in the company, that's a great question. And I think actually in a startup company, that can be a real challenge. Because if your CEO is someone who just strictly has an engineering background, for example, and is an amazing coder, maybe they need a product manager to help them to understand what are the steps that you need to go through, or what's an abbreviated form of a process that you can use to bring products to market. But if you pretty well understand the product development process yourself, you might have to wait until you're too busy raising money or running the company to be able to be the product manager yourself. So probably at the stage that you're at, do you feel like you understand product management?
Yes, I had the previous startup before.
Right. So
3 times implemented.
yeah, so you can probably get along for a while without that, but you might need a marketing person to help to develop some sales enablement materials.